The COVID-19 pandemic has multiple side effects, from economic loss and insecurity to problems with mental health and, most likely, violence between domestic partners. Adding to the problem is the change in access to shelters and courts, or even trustworthy advice. One agency trying to help surmount those barriers is Casa Myrna. To tell us about its work during the pandemic is its Director of Development and Communications, Leela Strong. Thanks for being with us, Leela.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with, I guess, what just about everybody is going through right now. The past couple of months, we've had a lot less interpersonal contact. What does that do to our heads?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic is making it harder for everyone right now, survivor of domestic violence or not. I think we're all looking for support and access to our friends, our family, our communities, and in this very difficult time for everyone.
Of course, when talking about domestic violence, we see official numbers, and it looks as if there's less of this problem. But on the other hand, there are reasons to believe there could be more. What do you see?
Yeah, what we're seeing is actually similar to the Boston Police Department. I know they recently released a report saying that they're seeing a slight uptick in the number of domestic violence incidents. What we're seeing is similar to that. We expected for the number of calls to our SafeLink hotline, which is the 24/7 domestic violence hotline for Massachusetts. We expected our calls to actually go down a little bit. When folks are stuck at home with their abuser, there's no time to call. You're home with the person who's hurting you. So we didn't expect people to be able to find a safe place to make those kind of calls.
Of course, I imagine there could be extra stresses on people. They might not start out as abusive, but you've got job stresses, money stresses, daycare isn't there with the way it was before. Don't those make things worse as well?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that domestic violence affects everyone equally. It crosses race, color, creed, religion, sexual orientation boundaries. But stress does not cause domestic violence, but it can exacerbate it. So what we're seeing is that, situations of physical, emotional, psychological, financial, sexual abuse are all happening at increased incidence because folks are in an increased stress situation, whether it is because of food, loss of job, because of health insecurity, or simply fear and anxiety. We are seeing an uptick in all of those areas.
In normal times, a person who's being abused might be able to go someplace else, maybe a shelter, and the abuser would be easier to relocate as well, I imagine. So what about now?
Yeah, it's a brand new world, and I think it's important to know that Casa Myrna and the SafeLink hotline are still open. Many and most support services are still available, but there is fear about going into congregate living, going into shelter during a pandemic. I would say that we do have very few emergency spots open, and we're able to do this with the help and support of some local hospitals, universities, and hotels that have offered space for survivors to go in the short term. But there really aren't a lot of options for folks right now. So that's what we're trying to work on, is how do we find safe places for people, and how do we keep people safe at home?
At Casa Myrna, you serve, imagine, a lot of the immigrant population in the Boston area. What about their challenges right now?
I mean, the challenges of the immigrant population are exacerbated further when you think about issues to access to and language barriers. It becomes that much harder. I will say that the SafeLink hotline has the capacity to translate into any language, and many and most of our staff speak at least 2 or 3 languages. So if you did want to call the hotline to receive support services or to create a safety plan, you can do that in any language.
What about the limits on access to people? Because I imagine in normal times, you do more person-to-person work at Casa Myrna, but nowadays when people have to do things remotely, and it's even hard to get on the phone sometimes if you're stuck in the house. So how do you get around that?
You don't. You adapt as best you can. Our community advocates, which are the folks who are generally meeting people where it's safest. So whether that is the courts, whether that's hospitals, healthcare centers, nail salons, Wherever we can meet you to help you feel safe, those folks are on the phones now quite a bit. I would say some of my colleagues have told me that they're on the phone from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., literally just walking around having supportive conversations with people who have been involved in Casa Myrna's work for months or years. And what we're seeing is that, being asked to stay home, even if you're not living with your abuser, is bringing up old feelings of trauma and anxiety and isolation from years of abuse. And we find that many people who have left an abusive relationship have also left a lot of their community behind. So having access to Casa Myrna and folks who can show you some love is really supportive when we're all feeling a little bit more isolated.
Explain the importance about showing love to somebody who calls. Why is that important?
Well, I mean, when you're in an abusive situation, you're not getting that from the people around you, and you don't feel safe frequently. So if you know somebody who is in an abusive situation, just tell them that you're there. Tell them that you love them. Tell them that you're here for them in whatever capacity that they're willing to accept or feel comfortable with. And reaching out to folks to simply say, in this very odd time in our country's history, to say, I love you, I'm here for you. It does a world of difference, survivor or not.
And I imagine what's also going on there is sometimes a person who's being abused might be internalizing the abuse to the point where they're saying, this is my fault, or maybe you have to get them over that, don't you?
I mean, we help people where they're at. We meet you where you're at. So if that is the challenge that you're working through, we help you find your power again. We help you find your stability. But we're helping. Our participants, our survivors, they do the work. They're the ones who bolster themselves up to find their own health again. But we like to be that support. We're proud to be that support.
We should mention that if people want to get in touch, you have a hotline, so we should tell people where they should call for that.
We do. The SafeLink hotline is 877-785-2020. It is Massachusetts-wide and open 24/7, 365 in all languages. So please, if you need support or you know somebody who does, please give us a call.